want to share a little tip with you when you're working on your brake system, particularly when replacing the rubber flexible brake hoses or flushing the brake system, any kind of work like removing a caliper. What I found is that these hoses really get neglected. And almost every Mercedes I see now over 30 years old needs to have these rubber hoses replaced, but when you remove them, you're going to get fluid dripping all over the place. We've already loosened this up. And if you let the fluid drain out of your master cylinder, you can get air in there and it can be really hard to bleed the system. So I don't let the fluid leak out. When I remove these hoses, I plug the lines until I put the new hose on. And let me show you what really works. So you can see as soon as you remove that hose, you got brake fluid dripping out on the floor. We use these little silicone plugs. You can just plug the end of the brake line and leave it until you're ready to put the new flexible hose on, and then quickly remove that plug and install the new hose. This will prevent emptying out your master cylinder. The other thing I would recommend is you take some rust penetrant and soak up these fittings about 30 minutes before you plan to take them off. The other thing that's real important, particularly on these rear ones because they get a lot of road grime and dirt, is get in there and clean the threads around the fitting. Clean them thoroughly. This will remove the rust, but it'll also get the junk out of there. Get some compressed air and blow that out. So when you replace it with a new hose, you're not adding dirt and grime into the brake system. If you want to save yourself a lot of headache when removing these fittings, use B-nut wrenches like you see here. If you use regular open-end wrenches and round out that top fitting, particularly on the hard brake line, you got a real problem trying to get it off. But the B-nut wrench gives you a much better grip on the heads of these lines. And while you're working on those flexible brake hoses in the rear, you should check the rear sway bar links. This is the W123 chassis. You just grab a hold of this, usually you can feel movement. Hear the clunking. Of course, that transmits into clunking going down the road. And if I could sneak the camera in there, you can see the rust and how the rubber boot just wore out and lost the grease inside the ball joint on that sway bar link. We do sell the heavy duty ones on our website. And look at this. We found another use for these silicone end cap plugs. We actually went to pressure bleed the brake system, and of course if those rubber seals on the top of the master cylinder reservoir are cracked, they will leak. So we had to replace one, and we were able to use that same silicone end cap that we used earlier on the brake lines, but it's a little hard to get on, but boy, it holds tight and you're not going to blow it off with the pressure from the bleeder. And just a final tip anytime you're working on your brakes, when you go to put the wheels back on, be sure and clean up these hub surfaces and use a little anti-seize to keep corrosion at bay.